Your Creative Push, Episode 60.
The more you keep saying you're going to do something when you have time, the less you're going to do it. You just have to do it now. There's no better time than now to actually do what you want to do.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Pascal Campion.
Hi, guys.
Pascal is a prolific French-American illustrator and animator from the San Francisco Bay Area, whose clients include DreamWorks Animation, Paramount Pictures, Disney Feature, Disney Toons, Cartoon Network, Hulu, and PBS. Working in the animation industry for over 15 years, he's currently the art director for the Netflix Warner Brothers Green Eggs and Ham series. His feature work includes visual development of Mr. Peabody and Sherman and the Penguins of Madagascar. And Pascal also has worked with Marvel Comics since 2013 and has been steadily posting over 3,000 images of personal work on his Sketches of the Day project since 2005. Pascal, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I was hoping that we could start there with the Sketches of the Day thing, because I'm a huge believer in the idea of, making your creative pursuits a daily one. So that's like kind of a part of your life. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
The way it started is I had just moved to the Bay Area from Portland. In Portland, I was in animation. I was directing commercials mainly. And when I moved to San Francisco to be with my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife, I started working in this company called Leapfrog, which is a great company.
The children's?
Yes, they did
cool.
They do children's toys, and they had a section at the time where we did video games. So I went there because I didn't know anybody in San Francisco, and I wanted to get a job so that I would actually get to meet people. And I became what they call the lead animator and eventually an art director over there, where I thought I was actually going to be drawing and animating stuff, but it turned out that I was mainly managing people over there. So I was getting a little bored over there. Not that the company is bad, it's just like the nature of my job meant that I drew less, and I really missed it a lot. So I figured like in the morning I would start doing some sketches for myself. And at the same time when I started, it was 1 week before Comic-Con, and all the artists in that company left to go to Comic-Con. And when they came back, they had all those sketchbooks and all this stuff they had brought back from it. And they're like, oh my God, you should come with us next year. But I didn't have any actual images or work because I had come from animation where I was doing tons and tons and tons of animation, but no illustration whatsoever. So I decided like every morning I would like come in a little early and do a sketch of the day, and by the end of the year I would make a sketchbook and bring that to Comic-Con. And we all decided that we're going to do that together in the art studio. There was like four of us. I think we were like 4 or 5 artists at a time. Mm-hmm. And so we all started doing this, and about after a week or so, maybe a month even, most of them just dropped out because it just got too busy, and then they just didn't have time to do it. But I kept going on, and it went from like drawing first like a single monster on a white piece of paper, or digital canvas because I was using Flash at that time, to like 2 monsters and 2 characters, and then I was getting bored just doing the drawing, so I needed to tell a story. I have a hard time doing an image without telling a story. Mm-hmm. So I started telling stories through my sketches, and eventually it became a thing where I just couldn't stop anymore. For about like I think a month and a half or so, I just didn't want to stop it at all because I was just discovering stuff, learning how to draw, learning how to play with color, composition, everything. It was really, really fun. And then maybe after say 3 months of doing this, I was posting them on my blog as I was doing them. I got a call from someone at Disney TV who said they'd seen my work, loved it, that they had this department at the time where they were doing shorts. They were basically what Disney was doing. They were finding artists, pairing them with writers that they liked, making them do a short animation and seeing if this animation could become like a TV series. So they asked me if I wanted to art direct one of their shorts. So they paired me up with this writer, started working on this short. It was like a sword and sorcery type of thing. But halfway through, they closed the division because they realized they weren't really making any money out of it. But I had done enough work on that one of the main guys at the Disney Central, Disney TV, the big thing, called me in and asked me if I wanted to work on pilots. So I started working on pilots, and then that just prompted me to keep doing my sketch of the day because I was realizing, well, this is actually getting attention. It was mainly for me, but I was also seeing that, like, I like doing this and it's actually getting me work. So great. So after a while, I dropped Leapfrog, kept doing my sketches a day, and then from there, like I started working with the Disney Features, DreamWorks, and all the major studios because they would see my sketches a day and just like, oh my god, this is great. Can you come and work with us? And now I still do it. So
What advice would you give to people that are struggling to be able to kind of sit down and actually do the work every day?
well, that's actually really a great question. Usually, I'm not usually ask that one. I would say like take it one step at a time. I know I'm incredibly impatient.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be over with very, very quickly, which is the reason I try to keep my sketches down to like under an hour if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Because after like a few minutes, I have this nervous energy where I just want to get to the end really quickly. So I say just start with like 10-minute sketches, then grow from there to like 15-minute sketches and to half an hour. Patience and like the amount of time you can sit down and draw is something you can work on. It's like it's like running. It's like a muscle. Like the more you exercise it, the better you get at it. And also when you finish your drawing, a lot of times what I see with younger artists, like they'll start a drawing and then not finish it because they're unhappy with it. But if you actually put yourself through the paces of finishing a drawing, your brain is going to create this sort of grid of like, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. You'll have a whole idea of what trip you're going to be taken on. It's always a journey when you do a drawing because you tell yourself a story and all the different processes and roughly where you are at the stage of the drawing once you know how to finish it. If you don't finish the drawing, you don't get those landmarks in your head. So just always finish the drawing, and it's going to help you create this map of like how much effort you're going to put into it. The more you finish, the more you actually understand the whole process, and the easier it is to actually get it done. If you keep starting and not finishing your drawings, you'll never get this map in your head of like, this is just the amount of work it takes to get a drawing done.
And what about for people who, like you said, they get kind of stuck where they're like, oh, I hate this, or, they're not really feeling what they're currently drawing. How do you kind of get over that?
You just finish the drawing and do another one. I have the same thing where like, if I do like 10 drawings, I'll think like one of them is maybe okay, and like the 9 other ones are really, really bad.
Hmm.
I know it's funny because
But they're all amazing, probably.
to your eyes they are, and thank you so much for saying
Yeah.
this. I really appreciate that.
Oh, dude, of course.
But no matter how often you can say that to an artist, it's really what the artist feels in regard to his drawings. And we always have this desire, this goal to attain. The closer we get to it, the further away it goes, because all of a sudden, like, you learn new stuff, and your perception of the art world has changed, and your perception of what you want to do has changed. So, what made you satisfied before, or what was your goal before? When you reach that goal, you get another one because you realize how much more there is to learn. And it's, for me, it's only great. It's never like horrible. It's horrible because I always realize that, man, it always goes back to the basic of drawings. I'm not very good at drawings. I just keep working on it, and the more I work, the worse I feel at it. But at the same time, I get incredible pleasure from creating images. Even if they're bad, the actual process of it is fun to me, and I just keep going. I know that like once in a while, I do an image that I just can't stop looking at and thinking, man, this is great. And the funny thing is, most of the time, that particular image is not very popular at all. People don't care for it. And the ones that like I don't particularly care for actually get very, very popular. So there's this weird thing. But knowing that I'm not gonna make a fantastic art piece every single time, it's actually something that pushes me to try harder to make good pieces. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I really like what you said about, how kind of there's no end goal. The goalpost always kind of keeps moving, and there's always some new thing to figure out. That's the greatest part about art and creativity, I think, is that there's no like definitive finish line where you're like, okay, like I win the game, like, and it's over, and like let me go play chess or something. That's the cool part of art. But that's also the thing that I think people need to make sure that they realize, that there is no like end goal, and it's gonna be like a lifetime pursuit, and to, as you said, really enjoy the time that they are sitting down and doing it, because that is what it's all about. It's not necessarily about creating all these different things that have successes, whatever success is for you. It's about enjoying the time where you're actually spending that time creating and putting your piece of yourself out there.
Yeah, but that's not an easy thing to understand. As a kid, I was real into Marvel comics. I grew up in France, but my father was American, so he would send me American comics because they were really hard to get in France. And I would also read French graphic novels. But I clearly remember sometimes thinking, when I'm older and I know how to draw, I will be able to do this. I had this whole thing in my head where like, I'm going to learn how to draw before I can actually do anything. And it took me years and years and years to realize that does never happen. You don't get to a point where like, oh, I know how to draw. You understand that like you can actually tell a story, that you can actually do something that people will recognize, but in your head you're always thinking, I'm going to get better. At some point I'm going to be like satisfied with my drawing. But you are to a certain degree and you keep going. But it took me years and years and years to realize that like it's not about like where I'm getting, exactly like you said. It's just like, oh, drawing and telling stories through it is fun for me. That's the part. The actual learning, that keeps happening all the time, especially when you start working in the industry when like you can't turn your head without seeing like an amazing artist. It's just really, really, really hard to like keep the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to draw. A few months ago, I was working on a movie at Paramount, and I was over there, and like I remember just thinking like walking down the halls or walking on the lot, and just like this guy, oh, I know this guy is amazing. This guy's worked on this movie. This guy's worked on this. This guy, this girl is just so freakishly good at like painting and all those things I'm supposed to be good at. And like I was realizing I was not even 1/10 as good technically as any of those guys. And I was just, my God, this is crazy. But they were thinking the same thing about me, which is weird when we start talking about it. So it just comes back to like, yeah, we're all like, we see mainly our flaws, but we don't actually see what we can actually bring. But when we're doing it, you are actually enjoying it, which is what comes out in the drawing, I think. So as long as you enjoy it, it's going to show in the drawing.
Yeah, and everybody has their own different style as well, and it's important to remember that like you don't want to be necessarily exactly like all the artists that you love. You want to be able to develop your own style. I think you have a very unique style, and that's really what matters. But like with anything in life, I think when you can set goals for yourself, and then sometimes you're achieving the goals, or like you're right at smack dab in the middle of it, but it doesn't feel like you've reached the finish line because as we were talking about, the goalpost keeps moving, and it's kind of a surreal feeling. Like even with this podcast, like it has taken off way quicker and faster than I thought it would, and I'm already kind of at my goal that I wanted to be at after a year, after only like 2 months. But it doesn't feel like it, like because now I'm looking towards the next thing and always trying to improve and always trying to, get more people to see it and find new artists to talk to. But when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like you've reached that end point, which I think is like we were talking about, is a hard thing to kind of get over.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, that goal keeps moving.
Yeah.
At some point, there's no more. I mean, for me, I don't think there's a goal anymore, except like I do it just because I actually enjoy them. I think I'm too old now to actually think, oh, when I'm going to grow up, I'll be this. It's like I'm 42, and I feel like when I turned 30, things got a whole lot easier in my life because I wasn't trying to become something else anymore. And then when I turned 40, it was even more because I wasn't trying to impress anymore. But I'm like, hey, at this point, I've done it. Have married, I have kids. I'm really, really happy with my life, and I can just really start to enjoy just doing stuff for what they are, and that feels really good. So I'm like, goals change and evolve as people evolve too.
Like you said, 30 is a big age. We've talked about it on the show before. I just turned 30 in August.
Oh,
and it's I think one of the catalysts for making me kind of do this, like realize that, all right, this podcast is what I want to do. So why am I waiting? Just do it,
That's you bring up a good point. I remember like when I first started in animation, I was working with this one guy, and he was directing the shorts I was working on, and he kept wanted to find time to do his stuff and his own short, and he kept saying like, once I'm going to be done with this, once I'm going to be done with this season, once I'm going to be done with this new animation, I'll do my work. And I was realizing, and I would come in the morning and just do my own work before the day work, and I was realizing like the more you keep saying you're going to do something when you have time, the less you're going to do it. You just have to do it now.
Right.
There's no better time than now to actually do what you want to do. And the rest will kind of take care of itself. I mean, when you're at work and you're paid to do work, if you've accepted that work, that's pretty much what you have to do then. But you don't have to wait to be ready. You don't have to wait to be better or anything to do what you want to do now. Just by doing it, you actually learn how to do it. So
absolutely. And you can always find time, even if it might you might have to sacrifice sleep or sacrifice a TV show that you watch every week or sacrifice going to the bar or your lunch hour, like you're doing your work instead of, going out. You can always kind of find the time. And that's what I really like your sketches of the day, because having that habit of a daily practice makes it not into like a big deal where you're always saying, whenever I have time, you're making that time every day and slowly kind of getting towards those goals of becoming better and, creating a body of work.
Right, and just also having fun, and I posted, sometimes like these past few weeks I've been really, really busy with my my professional work. So my sketches have been faster, but at the same time, I was trying different things, but like, faster, rougher type of sketches, different ideas, different things. And it's kind of fun actually, because you just get to discover new things you didn't know. So it's the constraints of daily life actually really help you with your art, I would say.
Yeah, and there's something also to be said about constraints and having deadlines, and even if they're self-imposed deadlines, is I've talked about this before on the show, Parkinson's law, where it's, however much time you have to do something, you'll take that much time to do it. So, if you have a task that you could do by tomorrow and the deadline is tomorrow, you'll get it done by tomorrow. But if it's 2 weeks from now, you'll probably get it done within 2 weeks. You stretch it out. So I think deadlines are really important too. And like you said, being able to do something really fast, it puts you in a different mindset. At least you're doing it. You're putting it in the time and you're making sure that you get to it.
Right. I totally agree. I love that Parkinson law. That's pretty cool. It's true. It's
Yeah.
whatever time you have you're going to use every second of it to get your stuff done. That's very true.
So what I really love about your art, like I said, it has a unique style, but and some of them are like these like grand scenes and like they're almost epic in nature, but so many of them are just kind of like these everyday type of scenes. Like I love the one where you're in the barber shop, just like the guy has the light coming in from behind him. Like you can tell stories, as you said, like you love to tell stories, but you can tell them in like these kind of everyday objects or everyday scenes. And I think a lot of people might hesitate to do that because they think it might be like too boring or they might not be able to tell a story. Could you talk a little bit about that, about telling stories with everyday scenes?
Yeah, actually, it's funny what you said about the fear of doing those types of stories, because I was like that when I was younger. Actually, those types of images kind of bored me when I was 17, 18, 19. All I wanted to do were big superhero stories of people clashing or epic cities being destroyed or something. I was always about the epic when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when I was getting older that I allowed myself to not necessarily draw that, because I've always enjoyed the little moments. I always loved photography. I remember this one time I was walking. I was in France. I was in Strasbourg. And I was a college student at the time, and I was walking back, and it was winter, and I was walking back from school or maybe from work. I was working in a restaurant at the time. From work to my studio, and I was walking over this little bridge, and under the bridge, there's this white duck floating on the water. Because it was so dark, it felt like the duck was just like floating on air, and there's those lights shining on the water. And I remember just like sitting there and just watching this duck for like a good 15, 20 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot. That's a lot of time to just hang out in the cold and watch a duck floating on the water.
Absolutely, it is.
And I was thinking, man, this is awesome. I love this. And I remember thinking, these are little moments that make me happy on an everyday basis. I'll be walking down the streets. Even now, I'll take my daughter to school and I'll just see how the light is shining on the windshield of the car in front of me and think, man, this is really cool. And I see those every day. And I think as I got older, because I started Sketch a Day when I was 31 or 32, I think. It took me a while to actually accept the fact that I like this. I like who I am. I'm going to start using that as opposed to trying to be someone else, which is the same issue as like we were talking about earlier, where when you're younger, you want to be something, you want to be someone, and a lot of times you want to be someone else than who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the whole thing of style too. Like you already have your style. Everybody has their own style. What it is like it's buried in all those influences you have from like, if you're an artist, a lot of times like you're gonna grow up wanting to be Mike Mignola or John Byrne or like Rembrandt or anybody else, and it stops you from really asking yourself the question like, well, how do I see this cup? How do I see this moment? What does it mean to me? How would I draw it? It's this thing where like for me, I like those little moments because I'm married, I have 3 kids, I like my life, and I have a lot of those moments happening every day. So I'm like, that I understand those moments. I can draw them because they speak to me. And then the whole storytelling part, that comes from experience, one thing, and the fact that I just love stories. I read a lot of books. I love movies. I do like animation. I'm not as funny. Oddly enough, not as crazy about animation as I am about like just movies in general, in the sense of like, I would not watch an animation simply because it's animated, but I would watch an animation if the story is great. Like I love The Iron Giant, for instance, one of my all-time favorite movies. But
which one?
Iron Giant.
Oh yeah.
But
beautiful
yeah,
movie.
but I didn't care for Little Mermaid, which I only saw 2-3 years ago. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I was just not into it when I was younger. So stories though is a big part of me. So taking those little moments and put them in a way that I can make them relate to other people, I think is what I try to do.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about, how when you were younger you wanted to make these epic things and then you had to almost give yourself permission to, create these like smaller stories, these everyday kind of objects. And I think the lesson there is that you don't need permission, or you do need permission, but you're able to grant yourself that permission. Just create whatever pops in your mind, whatever inspires you, and whatever gives you that joy during those everyday moments, because you're doing it for you first and foremost, the art or creativity or whatever it may be.
Absolutely, but it's funny because it's easy now with the hindsight of 30 years of doing it because
Right.
certain but at the time it's hard when you're younger to figure out what you want to do because one thing when you're in school you're not only the teachers keep like pushing you to try different things, which is what they're supposed to do. So you're like every day your world is turned upside down because when you're discovering a new either technique or a new artist or a new like way of thinking about art, and then you look around you and you have all those other kids that are drawing, and in most cases you think that they're all better than you, so you tend to want to be like them because you want to be good as well. So while you're in school, it's pretty hard to find your own identity.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you come out of school, you have this desire of like, oh, I have to like move fast to like get into society because life is passing me by. I'm already 24, and 24 is very young, but when you're 24, you feel you're old,
Mm-hmm.
which is a weird thing, because as you get older, you think you're younger than, which is a totally different subject, but
Right.
it takes a really strong personality from the get-go to like know exactly what they want, and I admire that in younger persons. I was not like that at all. I was very much so the kind of person who like was trying to fit in. I was always a little, I was never weird. I always thought I was not really an artist because I didn't have any like esoteric thoughts. I didn't have any like grand vision. I just like drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was trying to like find my way. And it took me a long time to figure out like, well, no, I like what I am. I don't have to be anything. And then when I started accepting that, it was mainly accepting my flaws as a human being because I have a lot, just like everybody else. But I have a lot. I was like, okay, well, I can, that's fine. I'll survive and I'll actually like enjoy this. And then finding my wife to really, she really grounds me a lot, so it's great. But when you're younger, you can tell people, oh yeah, just be yourself. But like all the times they don't know who they are, and that's really the hard thing to figure out. So
Yeah, I think I'm only starting to kind of figure it out now myself at 30 years old. It's never too late. And I think also the idea of yourself can change too over time. Like it's not necessarily that you're discovering yourself. It's kind of that you're changing and becoming a different version of yourself.
absolutely, that's like such a great point because like I talk a lot about it when I talk to students. It's like the me of 10 years ago would not do the same drawings of me now, even if we had the
Mm-hmm.
same technical level, because my desires, my aspirations, what I like now is different than what I liked 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's fine. You can change, like I started drawing superheroes because they're fun to do, but I don't do it in the same way what I've done like 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I was doing much more like funny animals, which I do less of now because I do more like either family oriented or like introspective type of images now, which I did not do any of those like 10 years ago. It's just
Mm-hmm.
I change, and being able to change, or for me at least, being able to recognize that you change as a person and incorporate that in your work is great because it helps you evolve. But you also have to like be okay letting go of something that like you were very good at before in order to learn something else. That's the other trick with artists is like once we think we've learned something that works and that people like, it's hard to let it go to like go and learn something else. Sometimes you put shackles on yourself without trying to. As you get older, it's easier to like let that go because you don't necessarily relate to it the same way.
Yeah, it's very true. It's important to kind of recognize it as well.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about how, like when you're drawing, there's like an energy that kind of goes through you. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's not like I'm possessed or anything, but a lot of time.
No, 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 no. I
No, no,
know, I know what you mean. I get it too.
when I get into my what I call my zone,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's like for years I've been trying to find a good metaphor for it. For me, it's like if you go diving, like when you first get to the shore, the idea of it is great, but then you have to like put on your suit and get into the water. And if the water's a little cold, you just don't want to get in just yet. It's hard to get in. And when you're inside of the water, it takes you a little bit of time to actually like find your breath to go down. But once you go down, you're deep, deep, deep. You're away from the surface. You're in your own world. The sound is different. The way you perceive the world is different. The way you move is different. And you're like in your own little world. And I feel like it's like that when I'm drawing. It's like when I get into my zone, it's like pretty much everything else disappears. People can be talking to me and I would barely hear them at all. I don't necessarily listen to music all the time, and sometimes I do. But it's everything that I can do to like get. It's not necessarily a cocoon. It's more like I'm into this part where my brain has overtaken everything, and I'm just telling myself this story, trying to get through, and the drawing is just coming through in a way. So it's like I'm not really doing the drawing as much as I'm controlling the energy to get this idea that I have in my head, that story that's unraveling in my head, to get it on canvas or paper. And it's a real amazing feeling, because sometimes I'll come out of it and look at what I've done and like, oh my God, how did I do that? And a lot of times for me, it's just like try to get out of the way of like overdoing it. Just let it happen. And it's a beautiful thing when it happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but most of the time it does.
Yeah. So I love that idea of like the flow state.
Flow state. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like athletes get it like easier, or like extreme sports people, but I have definitely experienced it myself where you're just kind of like in the zone, and it's almost like you're an antenna, like for like the universe almost. Yes. And it's like you're not doing it.
You're conduit. It's going through you, and you're like just lucky enough to be there and like help it out, or actually, I help it out by trying to stay out of the way. If that makes any sense. I don't try to control it.
Yeah.
Just try to direct it a little bit, but not control it.
Yeah, and that all comes from, like, I think the daily practice and having the skills to be able to do it so that you can kind of turn yourself off and make it automatic, and then, your hand just kind of does the work for you.
Exactly. It's funny when you say, like, turn yourself off, because a lot of times I notice that, like, my best days for drawing are, like, when I've done a lot of physical exercise. I bike a lot, so after a good bike, or when I'm a little tired, or when I'm a little sick. Because when I'm a little sick, I don't try to over control it. Just let things happen. You slow down a little bit. You're like conscious decision making. You just want to rest. And then when I draw like this, it takes me a little bit longer, but I get into it and it's just amazing. Or when I'm moody, I get moody quite a bit, just because nature of life. So when I'm like in that state of like, I'm not necessarily like super happy or super sad. I'm just in that state of like, things come out as well, because I'm not overly trying to control it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice too for people, if they want to kind of find that flow state, if they've had it before or they've never had it, is, trying to be able to turn yourself off and just like kill the ego almost, and not be in your brain, in your head, and thinking about, what people are going to think about it. It's just putting it out and trying to get it out there as authentically as possible.
That's the worst, when you overthink about what people are going to think about it. I seriously, because I work in commercials a lot, and I was like, everything I thought about was like how it's going to be perceived by people. And there's definitely some value to it. You can, in terms of like making money and making commercials and making products that work, the whole marketing idea definitely works. But for making art that pleases you, you definitely have to find a way to turn that off, which is not always easy.
Absolutely. Pascal, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you for what we call the final push. And this is where I ask you to kind of reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of somebody you've already inspired today that's, gearing up to get their work done, or maybe hasn't done any work ever and is really inspired by you to get started, and just give them your best words of advice and push them into action.
Whatever you're thinking right now, start drawing it. Whatever you're feeling, start drawing it. I would say just like try to figure out what you like to do and start doing it.
And you can find Pascal on his website, which is pascalcampion.com, PascalCampion.com. And you can find him on Facebook and Instagram, and I highly recommend that you do. That's Pascal Campion Art. And you can also find all the links we discussed today at yourcreativepush.com/Pascal. Pascal, thank you again, brother. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Boom. So much good stuff in that episode. Thank you so much, Pascal, for coming on the show. That was one of those conversations where I felt so inspired after the conversation. It was amazing. And then listening back again while editing it and pulling out all the cool quotes for the Instagram account and all of that. It was just so inspiring. There's so many good nuggets in there. Just really a cool Hallmark episode. And one of my favorite things to talk to anybody about, whether they're an artist or not, is the ability to achieve flow state. I think it's this universal thing it's just a way to tap into something that's just beyond you. And it's a feeling that you can't quite describe, but you can only feel. And if you're listening now and you're able to do that, please drop me a line. I'd love to hear about how you're able to achieve that kind of a feeling. If you really resonated with us while we were talking about this, or if you've listened to a previous episode with any of the other artists that are able to get to that point in their art or with anything else, definitely drop me a line. I'd love to hear about how you're able to do that. Youngman@yourcreativepush.com. One of my favorite things to talk about and to try to figure out. Also, as Pascal said, be yourself. It's something that's so often given as advice, but so hard to actually do. And the only way to actually figure out who you are and to be yourself is, to kind of just keep trying. And when it comes to art, it becomes easier and easier the more and more work you do. And the more it becomes a daily practice, the more comfortable you are putting yourself into the art as you figure out who you are, even if that isn't the person that you were 10 years ago or whenever it was that you might have started kind of going on this creative journey with the art. And it goes along so well with our guest tomorrow, Rick Garrett.
I think it's really fascinating. And so there's this whole history of occult thought and history and knowledge. It's this wealth of creative information that you can draw on in this way. And it's fascinating to me. So I think it was, for a long time, I kind of saw it as a side interest, not really connected with my artwork. But one day a switch flipped and I realized how important it is to incorporate your outside interests to your artwork, because that's what makes you you. And that's what contributes to your specific voice. And also, I don't know, it's kind of an honest expression if you're talking about things you love and have an interest in. So when I started tying some of those things in a little more intentionally, I think my artwork grew.
Rick's this really awesome photographer that uses this 100-year-old camera to take these awesome timeless photos that really, really make you feel like you're looking back into the past. And his series Earth Magic, which we spend most of the episode talking about, has to do with witchcraft and the occult. So it was really fun to talk about not just his process with an antique camera and all the trials and tribulations that come with using that, but also why he chooses the themes that he does and creativity in general. But that's for you tomorrow to look forward to. For today, hopefully you were inspired enough to get your work done. So go and get it done. And we will be here for you tomorrow if you need the push again. Have a great and productive day, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.